This is the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, where we have conversations with everyday martial artists about their histories and how martial arts influence their daily lives. You are listening to the abbreviated version of this podcast, which is the first 20 minutes or so of the show. Please consider supporting the show by subscribing on our Patreon page, www.patreon.com/MALMAG, and for about the price of one coffee shop coffee per month, you can get access to 4 new podcasts each month, 1 week before their YouTube release dates. You also have access to all of our existing shows, which at this point is about 100 hours of shows for you to enjoy. Individual shows can be purchased at our Gumroad page. That is malmag.gumroad.com. If you're looking for some sticks for FMA, some cool t-shirts, or even a course on Dos Manos, have a stop by martialartslifestylemagazine.com and click on the store tab or on the courses tab for that course. This week is our Season 2 finale, and I would like to thank all of our Patreon subscribers for helping this show happen. I would also like to thank all of our listeners on all of the platforms for being a part of our audience. We're looking forward to bringing you Season 3 coming up soon. In this final episode of Season 2, I connect with Texas, and I talk with legendary martial artist Harley Elmore. And we talk about how he got into martial arts, his humble beginnings, training the Navy SEALs and other special forces, and training police forces to deal with the crime of human trafficking, and much more. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, and this week I am connecting to Oklahoma, and I'm talking to a very interesting gentleman who I've met, I can't even say how many years ago, but one of those gentlemen that I love to just talk to. We have the greatest conversations when we are able to sit and chat, and he does a lot of great things, and he's got a great story, and I think you'll enjoy to hear about it. Welcome, Mr. Harley Elmore, to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You've been on my wish list since the beginning. I keep telling people kind of how this thing came together, and I sat down and literally just made a wish list of people that I could talk to just off the top of my head without even really doing a lot of thought. And I wanted to put these things out once a week, which I do. And I had something like 2.5 years worth of people just off the top of my head.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. But that's, the benefit of kind of being where I'm at and the connections we all have with people all over. It makes it kind of an easy list to make. And then as we go along and talk, and I talk with people, names come up and I'm like, oh yeah. And I throw that on the list. And sometimes it might even be people I don't necessarily know. Like a few people I've been connected. They said, oh, this was my first instructor. I said, well, that sounds like an interesting person to talk to. And I connect with them and talk with them and stuff. So, it makes it kind of a cool show. And then, then sometimes I get right back to the wish list because I'll go off the list and then get back to the wish list and all that kind of thing. So anyway, and you're a busy guy. I'm kind of glad that I was able to get you locked down to a time.
Yeah, I'm sorry that we've kind of bounced around with some dates and that we have to do it so early in the morning, but you're just as busy.
Yeah, it's no doubt. more locally, like running in my little 3-mile track, it seems like, between my home and the academy, but busy nonetheless. Yeah. So let's talk about how you got started in martial arts, the kind of where, when, and why.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I will say, like most people my age, Bruce Lee. I remember seeing my first Bruce Lee movie. And the magnitude of that was, hard to measure. And I grew up in the country of Arkansas. We had 3 channels and one was PBS, right? So,
right.
Oh
wow. So you didn't even get all the networks. You got
no, we didn't know.
One. Wow.
Yeah. So there was no Kung Fu movies, nothing. And certainly no martial arts. So when I went to visit some my aunt and uncle that lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they had like cable television or whatever it was, that's you stay up late and watch the martial arts movie. And I was just a little guy, and I remember thinking, man, that's amazing. But wasn't all there was. I eventually, as I got older, I thought, man, this martial arts stuff is pretty cool. And and then like a lot of people, I grew up in a household that was pretty violent, and I felt like as the oldest son, it was my job to be able to defend my mom and my little brother. And so and I had seen in martial arts movies that martial arts could help you do that. And
Right.
and it was how you stood up for people, because that's what Bruce Lee's movies were about. And
Right.
so as a young kid, I thought, well, this is an answer. This is an answer to that. And although I was still fascinated by the martial arts and the cultural aspects of it. I was fascinated that there were people around the world that didn't speak the same language, that didn't look like me. They didn't eat the same food. They didn't pray to the same God. I mean, just as foreign to me as they could possibly be. And I was fascinated by that. And the martial arts helped me explore that. So my first martial arts lesson, I found uh, a mail-in course, a mail order
Oh,
martial arts
wow.
course.
From the comic books?
Yeah, yeah. And it was someplace, I want to say the original destination, the place I was sending money to. It was like $5 a lesson, and you got a little booklet, and it
Oh,
said,
wow.
a little black and white photo. This is a horse stance. Stand here for 5 minutes. And this is a reverse punch. Stand in front of the wall and do your reverse punches 500 times. And this is a front stretch. And it was interesting enough, it was a multicultural curriculum. So
Wow.
you send in your $5 and they'd send you a little booklet. And I would do whatever that booklet said. Like I was training. And
Wow.
I cleaned out my grandfather's barn, and my family all still talk about this. I'd get an old tow sack and stuff it full of old clothes and wear my leather work gloves that I used to haul hay and stuff, and I would punch the bag, and they thought it was the funniest thing in the world. Just, what are you doing? Because nobody in Arkansas was doing that at the time. Not certainly not in the rural parts. Um, so that was how I got started. Um, and I mean, that was no small thing. I was putting in a ton of work. It was silly that
Wow.
some little redneck kid was out there burning reps. But eventually I ran into one of my teachers. Had a friend who was the reigning PKA world champion.
Uh, those are
And
three letters I remember from my day.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, so it was full contact kickboxing. It was the full contact kickboxing organization in the United States at the time, but before Muay Thai got here. And
Right.
so boxing gloves, full contact, you remember. And so he was the reigning world champion, and he was going and starting a training group in this town and then that town and that town. And my little town happened to be one of the places because we're geographically we weren't that far away. And so he came in and taught Goju. And I thought I was learning Goju. But it was tons of calisthenics and then lots of sparring
Hmm.
because, um, he's got a fight coming up in a couple of months, and he's
He
bringing
needs
his
people to train with.
yes. Yes, and of course we were
Gotcha.
kids, but he was bringing down his training partners, and they were all sparring together, and he was collecting our little $20 a month or whatever. And so that lasted for a while, and then he moved on. But by then we had met his friend and one of his sparring partners. That guy's name was Norris Williams, and then he brought in a guy named Lafayette
I
Lawson.
remember him. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember him.
yeah, and then he brought in Lafayette Lawson, who had just become the PKA World Kickboxing Champion and was the reigning ISKA World Champion. And both salty guys and really good. Lafayette was a Taekwondo guy I mean, we weren't learning Taekwondo, we were learning full contact kickboxing.
Kickboxing, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And but they called it Taekwondo because that's what their rank was in. But it was southpaw. I mean, I'm sorry, it was a orthodox lead. Jab, cross, hook, right round kick, spinning heel kick, spinning back kick. The PKA stuff at the time, and really
Yeah.
their thing was have pretty good boxing hands, get people up against the ropes, and then do a spinning back kick and kill them. And just
Right. Yeah.
launch them between the ropes. I watched Lafayette kick a
Yeah.
guy. He folded in half and went through the ropes, and I was
Uh,
like, yeah, I want to do that.
yeah, that was like one of Bad Brad Hefton's like signature moves too.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, bad Brad Hefton. That's right.
Because that was down the road for me. That was Rockford, Illinois, and I grew up like in Moline, Illinois, so that wasn't far. So that was kind of
Nice.
like the guy we were like watching. That's our Illinois guy. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Right on. Yeah, big bad Brad. Yeah, so that was the era I kind of grew up with, and it was good for me because it was good calisthenics. It took a young kid, and made him face those fears and lots of punching and kicking and getting the breath knocked out of you, and get back up and do it again, and get back up and do it again. And those were super important lessons for me, and as a young man, as they all for all of us as young men. And
Mhm.
so that was my start. Uh, then after that, I met a guy named Monty Atchley, and he had studied multiple systems and was an instructor in multiple systems. And so again, a kind of a multicultural curriculum. He taught um, a Kempo I'm sorry, an Okinawan Kempo system, and he taught
Oh, cool.
yeah, and he taught a Chinese Kung Fu system, and he ranked in them separately. And so you got your black belt in this or your black sash in that, and I got both. Um, and I studied with him. He was the first instructor I got my first black belt under, and that was good for me because my family fell apart at that time, and so I was living on my own at 16, and so an unsupervised 16-year-old mad at the world.
So, sounds like you got emancipated, whether it was legal or not. You just
Yeah, that's
you
it.
became your own entity. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I came home one day, my dad said, "We're moving." And I said, "I don't want to move. I got martial arts, I got my friends, I'm going to school." He said, "Well, that's good because you're not. There's not room in my girlfriend's house for you. So
Oh, wow.
you
Okay.
stay here." And so I stayed in the house. Um, and I lived out in rural Arkansas. And so with a house with no electricity, no running water. Um,
Damn.
yeah. And so
Roughing it.
yeah, and so I did that, and still put myself through school and graduated from high school and had jobs. And when everybody else was dating and going to proms and stuff, I was working, just to try and make a living. But
Yeah.
but martial arts is really what gave me a structure at that time, and kept me from going too far to the right or left. And good mentors, good training partners, who I'm still friends with to this day. And so yeah, it was, probably kept me out of all sorts of trouble.
Well, so yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's martial arts is a great thing for that. And I think it saved a lot of young people. You know, it was certainly instrumental in that sort of younger developmental time of my life too. I started around 12 years old. I fortunately did not have, I think, a lot of influence going in the bad way, but it's nice to at least reinforce staying on the proper side of things.
Yes.
With people I admired, and an endeavor that meant a lot. And I think that's probably why we see younger people end up in gangs, because it is giving them something to belong to.
Yeah,
uh,
that's right. Some
Martial arts can
structure.
certainly do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so fortunately I had those influences. And so no matter how bad anything else was going in my life, my martial arts training was going great.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
it was the one thing, it was the one place where I went and I was doing well. School wasn't particularly going well, and and relationships weren't really going well. But in martial arts, I could control a little bit of that. I couldn't seem to control math, but I could control sparring, and And also, like I said, I was mad at the world. And so I took that into martial arts training and burnt that out on the heavy bag and on sparring partners and, all that stuff. Fortunately, my instructor had a good crew of adults that could handle my teenage, issues. Um, and so, they bore the brunt of a lot of that. But it got me through it, got me through that. And, I'll forever be grateful to that instructor and those people who were so kind enough to help me get through that. No, but in martial arts was really about, at that time, it was really about fighting, and it was really about proving myself. Uh, you know, the things, man. Trying to
Yeah.
prove my dad wrong, trying to prove the world wrong. I am important. I can be somebody. The whole thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was like that. That was what martial arts was to me until I met Terry Gibson. Um, and so I met Terry Gibson in 1988 at a Sifu Fong seminar, and
Wow.
yeah, and so I met Sifu Fong.
That's when Sifu came to Oklahoma, or you went to Atlanta?
No, Sifu Fong was coming to Tulsa, Oklahoma on a regular basis. Then he had a guy, an instructor under him named Carl Peck, I believe, and
Hmm.
he was one of Sifu Fong's disciples. Sifu Fong had a group of people called disciples at the time, I think. I believe that's the term. And Carl Peck was there in Tulsa and was having Sifu Fong in. And of course, Terry and Kathy Gibson had trained with Sifu Fong and knew him. And so he was the dummy for Sifu Fong for a lot of things. And
Oh, okay.
so, yeah. And so um, after the seminar, our lunch or something, we were kind of all standing around talking, and I thought, earlier I thought this big muscled up guy, he's, what's he going to do with Sifu Fong, and they moved completely different. Terry moved like a Thai boxer, and Sifu Fong moved like Sifu Fong does. And so I was like
Right.
a completely different thing. And of course Sifu Fong's slick anyway. So uh, um, I was like, what's that big guy lumbering around? I wasn't used to Muay Thai at all. And
Right.
um, but he said at lunch that he was an instructor under Dan Inosanto, and I was like, "What? I'd
Whoa.
never even met anybody who knew Dan Inosanto." And so I get his card and started calling him and asking him questions, and he was super nice, and he'd talk to me forever, and then he'd be like, "Hey, I got to go teach class. Here's my wife, Kathy," and then Kathy would talk to me forever.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just harassed them, and they were so sweet, so nice. Um, and they're one of the reasons why I answer questions on the internet today. Most of the time when people text me or ask me questions on the internet, like, what was Bruce Lee like? I'm like, I don't even want to answer that. But eventually I'm like, listen, I appreciate your question. I was 5 years old when Bruce Lee died. I never met him. I have no idea what
Yeah.
Bruce Lee was like. I try and be a good guy and answer people's questions like
Yeah.
Sifu Terry did. So
I think that's a good thing. I've always appreciated that, and I've been fortunate enough to have those people around too that were willing to answer
yeah,
questions, and I always tried not to abuse that, because I could tell they would sit and talk to me as long as I was willing to talk.
yep,
But at the same time, and I like your answer in that particular situation too, because it's an honest answer with a lot of subtlety to it, which is, you're like, I was 5 years old, I wasn't there, and neither were you, and a lot of people. So it's like you can start to kind of understand there's a great subtlety to this answer, which is you might not know, and there's a few people who would from their experience, and you can probably read about that, and maybe if you're lucky you can actually ask them, but accept their answer, because that's going to be as close to the actual reality as you're going to get.
right, right. And that's basically what I tell people. Like, there are people, first off, go meet Dan Inosanto and study with him and hear it straight from the man's mouth. And then people inevitably want to go, well, what about these other guys? I'm like, if you're interested in Bruce Lee, then even a guy who sat down and had lunch with him one time will have something to
Right.
tell you about his experience and about his perception of Bruce Lee and that sort of thing. And so that's that guy's perception. You got to understand that. It's not necessarily the hardcore truth of a thing. But anybody who knew him and had some interaction with him, sure, listen to what they had to say, get their viewpoints, and then you figure it out for yourself what you think the man was like and what he was trying to say, and But I try and stay away from all that. I leave that to Dwight.
Yeah.
He seems to enjoy that argument. I detest it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I could deal with it a little bit, and I'm more like you. I more enjoy watching him do it as opposed to participating in it too much. But
I sit back and just like, hey,
yeah.
I remember the stuff in the 90s and how it affected Guru, and so out of respect to Guru, I just keep my mouth shut and try and teach the art and represent Guru Dan the best I can. So.
Yeah, I hear you. Same way. What I get wound up about is when people attack him, and that.
Yes.
Other than that, and like I'm not gonna say, well, Bruce Lee this or Bruce Lee that, because I don't know.
Yeah,
I really don't know, and it kind of and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it doesn't matter to me. I'm in this, and if you came out with a completely different, 100% guaranteed bona fide fact about Bruce Lee that is the exact opposite of anything I know, it doesn't matter. It's not going to change what I'm doing.
Nope.
Because I think I'm on a good path. I like the path. I like the people I'm around. I like being connected to people like yourself, and I think that's a good thing. The direction we're going is a good one. And if the source of it was different or whatever, okay, that's fine. I just know what we're doing now, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Obviously I'm a fan of Bruce Lee and his art and the ideas and philosophies that he espoused, but I never met him. I didn't have a relationship with him, but I know Dan Inosanto and I have a relationship with him, and I love him and he loves me. And I am a Dan Inosanto fan. Like, and I'll support him and back him up, and it doesn't matter what anybody else is going to say or what. Does not matter. I am a loyal Dan Inosanto, and if he says it's spelt like this, then that's the way I spell it. And if he says it was in this order, that's the way. Now, fortunately, Guru is not like that, right? He's much more open than that. But yeah, I'm 100% a Dan Inosanto guy.
Oh yeah. I mean, to what you're saying, it's like, he will constantly try to research. If he does have a term, he tries to figure out, okay, do I have it correct? And it was one of the things that he did with Karen, when she was there, was because she spoke the Sign and Tagalog, and he was getting actually a correction on certain terms that he had off just a little bit.
Right.
And so he'll constantly try to correct, and it's like, it seems to be the gotchas that people play online. It's like, no, that term is actually this. Okay, well, that's fixable. That's a thing. That's not a big crime. We get words and stuff wrong all the time.
Absolutely.
It's like, okay, if that's your complaint on him, that's really not that big of a deal.
We're pretty good with that. I mean, does that make me a better teacher? Maybe. Does it make me a better martial artist? Certainly not. But I'm open. I get corrected all the time on stuff, and I'm like, hey, I don't speak any of the dialects, and from the Philippines.
And this concludes the abbreviated version of the podcast. Please consider supporting the program by going to www.patreon.com/MALMAG and subscribing to the show. You can also purchase this individual episode or any individual episode at our Gumroad page. That's malmag.gumroad.com. Thank you for listening to the Season 2 finale with Harley Elmore. Coming up next week, I connect to the distant land of Myanmar, and we talk with Letway instructor Win Zin Oo. Our Malmag online store at martialartslifestylemagazine.com has a full selection of Timmy B's brand sticks for FMA and Krabiker Bong. Timmy B's brand now selling in Japan as well. Beautiful Timmy B's brand shirts and Dos Manos shirts are available, with new t-shirt designs and more products coming soon. An online course in the Dos Manos method for FMA is available under the Courses tab. More courses coming soon. Check out the Places to Train tab to find schools near you, and click on the events calendar page to see what seminars and events are happening all around the world. And of course, visit our main page for articles on the martial arts. Music by Jack L. Relic. Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine and the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast are trademarked and copyrighted by TNT LLC.